Okay, so everybody, I am super pumped for this podcast episode. I have Chris Benjamin on the episode. And so, guys, this one is really going to be special. Chris is not your typical realtor. I will say that, and we will get into why. But Chris, thank you very much for doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me, Bo. It's like the pleasure is mine. I mean that.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. I appreciate that. So, before we get started, I wanted to go over a few of Chris's achievements and awards that he has, accomplished over the years. So, I'm going to read these off. First of all, Chris's team was ranked number 2 in 2021 for the Downey Association of Realtors. Ranked number 1 in 2020 for the Downey Association of Realtors, and that's team as well.
Right.
Okay. We have this one's really cool. So keynote speaker at the Tom Ferry Summit in 2022, and he was in front of more than 20,000 agents in person and online, which we will dive into that as well. But in his past life, Chris was a licensed attorney, past criminal defense attorney to be specific, jury trials, sex assaults, murder, DUI, domestic battery, drug trafficking. So, man, that's heavy. So we'll get into that as well. And then this will be probably something that we spend a lot of time on in the beginning of this episode. So Chris actually successfully summited Mount Everest spring of 2022. And that is exciting. And then probably the most
Thank
exciting
you.
thing is Chris and his wife are expecting their first child in March. So
Right.
congratulations. That's awesome. Everybody who
Thank you.
listens to this, head over to Instagram and congratulate Chris and his family. That's amazing. So
Thank you, brother.
yeah, absolutely, man. So that's a lot, dude. So how does all that make you feel? I mean, that's quite the rap sheet.
Right. Oh, well, I appreciate it. As when you asked me to sort of put down a few things that I might be proud of, it's funny because you really want to. Who doesn't want to have a rap sheet that they're proud of?
Right.
So as I hear these things, it does make me feel really grateful because similar to you and probably a lot of people on this podcast is we're so focused on what's coming next. Like I'm so goal oriented, I'm so motivated by the carrot that
Right.
honestly, Everest feels like a lifetime ago.
Mm.
And being number 2 on my board last year feels like an eternity ago. And
Right.
I don't mean this, I mean this respectfully to myself because I want to be grateful for what I've done. But I kind of think you're only as good as your last transaction. You're only as good as the last mountain you've climbed. And um, I mean that's a tough reality, but that is the truth. So I don't want to be the best in 2022. My
Mhm.
focus now is how do I make my 2023 rap sheet something that people are like, gosh, this guy's really doing it. So uh yeah,
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, and I'm pumped to get into that. One thing,
thanks.
that I'm curious about is I want to kind of know the beginning process and all the way to the end of what this journey was like for you. So maybe explain, I mean, let's even take it back to like your childhood. Were you like an adventurous kid? Did you like to hike and did you like run around with no shoes? Because I mean, that's first of all, that's how I was. I mean, now I can't even like
Yeah.
go outside without shoes or flip-flops or something. But I mean, I was like that, not to your extent, but I mean, explain your childhood. What was that like? I mean, because that's big.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, from my childhood perspective, I had no climbing experience. I always liked being outside. I liked nature, but my family were not campers. We had an RV, so we used to do RV type camping.
Yeah.
So my love and like my passion for climbing and nature really didn't come later, but I do feel like from a very young age, I was always wanting to put myself in really uncomfortable positions. I think just being a product of like an immigrant family, my parents are from Egypt, so me and my sister are first generation,
Oh, cool.
and we grew up with a lot of opportunity. My parents sacrificed a lot to put us through school, to put me through law school, to really provide. And I think when you are raised a certain way, at least for me, I felt sort of this obligation to constantly put myself in really uncomfortable situations.
Right.
So it might not be climbing, but I was always I was always doing things that were challenging because I kind of wanted to see what I was made of. So I worked on a farm for a summer, farming coffee. I worked in a hostel, like running the night shift. I've done some things that are kind of peculiar or off the wall because I just kind of want to know and feel in my heart like I could do anything. And I think it's important to see like how the rest of the world lives, because what
Right.
excuse me, what you and I get to experience in our like well-lit studios with our nice clothes on, it's not how the rest of the world operates. And I think it's important to know like you have some depth. So along to answer your question more shortly, I didn't have a lot of experience climbing
Yeah.
growing up, but I was always chasing what was difficult. And I think that's kind of what put me on this route to say I'm climbing Mount Everest.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, the Mount Everest story is, I mean, when I first, because I started following you just kind of through following Tom Ferry and being in that community, in that circle and stuff. And then I discovered later that you had completed Mount Everest. And I was like, wow, we gotta talk about this. We gotta, we gotta talk about this. So, but before we do that, I mean, dive even deeper about this, this immigrant uh, history that you have. I'm explaining kind of like what your parents did, and again, kind of how that shaped who you are today.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it really formed who I am today. So my family immigrated in 1982, 1983 to the United States.
Okay.
And since I was born in 1990, they've been in the real estate industry. So I've
Oh,
only known real estate.
yeah.
This industry has been part of my life since I was a baby.
Interesting.
And growing up, I remember feeling very, this is very transparent, but growing up, I remember feeling very frustrated or upset at my family because they were really absent. And I think you kind of know this from being in a sales position is it's not that it takes hard work, but it takes doing whatever it takes to
Yeah,
get the result you want.
absolutely.
So I didn't understand why they were gone all the time until I grew up and realized they were working hard to like provide for us. And I think that is an immigrant mentality type family. You know, you only have two options. You're either going to be a doctor or a lawyer. So my sister is a dentist. I did the law thing and then I ended up joining my family anyways.
Yeah.
So my family has had a huge impact. One, I'm working with them now. My dad is the broker, my mom
Mm.
is the team lead. This team, we've been growing together. So I have a great relationship with them now. And I really am so appreciative of kind of seeing them grind so hard
Right.
because it takes some self awareness to recognize that how much they were influencing me. So whether it's Everest or whether it's real estate, there's really not many people, and I would say this pretty confidently, like I work hard.
Yeah.
I work really hard and I'm really proud of that. And I learned that from watching them kind of give up everything to make
Yeah.
it. And that's kind of what it takes in a lot of business. I mean, I think that's what it takes in life is you really got to be willing to put in the work to get the results you want in anything.
Right. Yeah, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that, especially the world that we're living in today, that's something that's much easier said than done. I think a lot of people say that, but what they do is completely different. You have, and we'll get into social media as well, because on top of everything else, you are absolutely killing the social media game.
Thanks,
So,
man.
I mean, yeah, so it's inspiring what you're doing. I mean, really take away the social media stuff. I mean, you have Everest and you have this immigrant background, and it's really inspiring. So, um,
Thank you.
so Mount Everest, I want to know
Yes.
what was the planning and preparation for that, and how long did it take you to prepare yourself mentally, physically, all the things to actually say, okay, I'm doing this?
Yeah. That's a great question. So Everest kind of for me had two phases. Everest was the dream, the goal that got
Yeah.
started when I was about 21 years old. And then it was sort of the second phase when it was like, how are we going to make this real? It's starting to get to a place where you could make it real. So I'll give it to you in two sections. It started when I was graduating from college early. I went to American University in Washington, D.C., and I was finishing a semester early before heading to law school. And
Yeah.
my buddies and I were in the dorm room just kind of kicking around ideas. What could Chris do for 9 months before going to law school? And totally off the cuff, one of my buddies says, "What about Mount Everest?" I was 21, grew up in Southern California, no big mountains around me. And I was like, I don't even think I've heard of Mount Everest. Where is that? What
Wow.
is that?
Yeah.
And that's all it took. She planted the seed. I did a little bit of research and I said, I think I would love to try something like that one day. So what I did was I signed up for a hike from a village called Jiri all the way to Everest Base Camp. And I was 21 years old. I did it all by myself with the help of a porter and a Sherpa, but it wasn't climbing. It was just hiking. It was a 3-week hike to base camp. And
So
on
hold
that
on,
hike,
I gotta stop you. So you're 21 years old. You decide that okay, this dream of climbing Mount Everest is something that I legit want to pursue, and you immediately go to I'm gonna do this 3 week hike, or was there preparation for that?
yeah, that's so there was a lot of preparation for that. I was in college, so I was already staying fit, but I knew that the season to hike to base camp was in April. You could do it in April.
Okay.
And I was leaving college December. So I had January, February, March to do something part of April. So about 4 months to stay fit. I kind of mentioned wanting to be in uncomfortable situations. So, long story short, I went to Thailand. I got a job working the night shift at a hostel so I could live somewhere for free. I didn't want to rely on my parents. And
Yeah.
I trained Muay Thai,
Mm,
Thai boxing. So I wrestled growing up. I was in Taekwondo and got my black belt. I've always liked combat sports, but to answer your question, to prepare for my hike, I did a lot of Muay Thai, no hiking, just cardio, just like fighting, to be honest. And yeah, that was enough for me to have a successful trip. So I went on that trip. I did the 3-week hike. Um, I loved it. I really, really loved it. I had a little bit of rock climbing experience when I was in Thailand. I kind of had told myself, you're going to Everest. So why don't you learn how to rock climb, even though there's no rock climbing there? So I dipped my toes into rock climbing before I go on this hike, and I loved it. And this is when you know the universe is conspiring for you.
mm,
I finish the Everest hike, I fall in love with it, and I decide one day I'm going to climb to the summit. Don't know how, but one day I'm going to come back and climb to the summit. I ended up getting a scholarship to UNLV Law School, Nevada, Las Vegas.
okay.
And for anybody listening that doesn't know, Vegas is the mecca of rock climbing.
Mm,
So outside of Vegas is a place called Red Rocks and the best rock climbing in the world. I
wow.
ended up going to law school there, and that's where I really carved this passion for rock climbing. And the whole time I was rock climbing, it was like, how do you get back to Everest? So I
Right.
wasn't actively trying to get there, but I was the wheels were in motion.
Right.
And just to kind of fast forward 10 years, I kept rock climbing and then I started chipping away at smaller peaks. I moved to Lake Tahoe, which is northern Nevada.
Yeah.
That's where I got like my first lawyer job.
Okay.
And the whole motivation is so I could keep climbing. And the idea of climbing is what do I have to do to get the skills and the confidence that makes me feel worthy to try to climb Mount Everest?
Right.
And I just did what everyone does. I just did what a lot of people do. I started with the domestic stuff. I rock climbed the east face of Mount Whitney. You don't really have to rock climb to be climbing Mount Everest, but it was a good challenge. I climbed the Rainiers. I did like the ice climbing of Baker. I went to South America and climbed in the Andes. I did Kilimanjaro with my mom. I really started to do what I needed to decide, do you have this in you?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the long way to tell you how I got there. But the training got very dialed in my last 3 years leading up to it. So it was sort of this long course. And then I would say 3 years before Everest happened is when things were really moving towards that.
Okay, so you did the Mount Everest hike, which took 3 weeks. How many miles is that?
That's a great question. I have no idea,
That's
but
not something.
nobody,
That's not something that you Strava, is it?
you know, it probably is. I'm sure we could
Maybe.
Google it.
Let's
The
see. Let's see.
reason Jiri to Everest Base Camp.
Jiri.
J Jiri to Everest Base Camp. What you're going to find if anybody searches this is most people who hike to Mount Everest Base Camp start at a place called Lukla. That's the airport that you fly into, and it's about a 10-day trek.
Yeah, it
That's
does
what
say
I
Lukla right here. It does say Lukla.
that's where most people get started. The
Mm.
reason why I didn't want to start there was specifically because most people did it. And I just said, if this is what most people do,
Mm.
I could do more. So
Mm.
that's when I said to start at a village called Jiri. And the historical significance of Jiri is Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, the first two men to ever climb Mount Everest, started at that village.
Oh,
And I said, if that's where the OGs start, that's where I start.
yep, yep, yep. Okay, so on here, let's see. So it does say, for anybody curious, which I am, that's why I looked it up. So distance from Jiri to Everest Base Camp is 185 kilometers, which nobody cares about that. So it is 115 miles.
That's far.
That's hella far. I mean,
So
that's
what's
super far. I don't even like driving 115 miles. So
115 miles divided by, let's just say, 21 days? 115 divided by 21. That's not so bad. That's like 6 miles a day.
yeah, but for 21 days,
Do you know what's funny about that? And I haven't shared this on a podcast. I've shared it with friends, but I haven't shared it. Is my third day on the hike. So we're not even talking about when I summited last year. My third day on the hike, when I was 21 years old, I got to a tea house. The people that I'm with don't speak any English because it's just me, my Sherpa, and my porter. Nobody is on the trail because nobody starts at this village. It's like, why would you put yourself through that? But I wanted to do that. And it took me 13 hours by bus to get to this place. So,
wow,
long story short, 2 or 3 days into the trip, it's at the very beginning. I get into the tea house, they throw my bag on the ground, they close the door behind me, and I begin just weeping,
really?
crying my eyes out. Because I look at the itinerary and I see that there's another like 17 days ahead of us,
Mm,
and I have no way out. I'm
mm,
13 hours by bus. I'm 2 days by hiking.
yeah.
There's no way out. This
Mm,
is 2012. So we're in the Skype world. There's no FaceTime. The Wi Fi is not what it is today. I
yeah.
had like very little communication. And the learning piece about that and like what I take back and the reason why I share it is I really believe in this idea of burning the boats.
Mm,
I really believe that when people have a contingency or an exit strategy, when shit gets gnarly, they will go towards that door because it's available to them. But
mm,
when there is no way out, when there is nobody coming to save you, you will find a way.
mhm.
Everybody finds a way if they're forced to.
Right.
And that was one of the first times that I was really forced to say to myself, nobody is coming to save you. And
Mm,
there is no way out. There's
mm.
only up. So go.
So, if you decided not to do that, what if you said, no, 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 check, please. I'm out of here. You know, what would you do? Like, could you tell them like, no, no, I'm driving the 13 hours back. I can't do this. I've decided not to do it. Like, would they do that? Or what would
That's a
that look
great
like?
question. I have no idea. I like it. I felt helpless. I felt truly helpless. And I'm kind of grateful for that, because if I didn't feel helpless, if they would have spoke better English, or if I could have phoned a friend to make an arrangement for me, I probably would have leaned into it.
Mhm.
And at that time, 21 years old, I didn't feel like there was an option. You know, I kind of give you this anecdote of putting myself in uncomfortable situations and I learned from them. But I one time ran an ultra marathon, an ultra trail run. It was 50 kilometers, so about 36 miles and like 6,000 feet of elevation gain. And I failed. Mile 30, I collapsed. Mile 30, I cramped and I nearly like stumbled down this cliff. It really scared me.
Mhm.
And part of the reason I failed is because I had a way out. Because where I gave up was close to a public road, and a man stopped and saw me on the ground in his pickup truck and said, "Are you okay? Can I help you?" And I took the lifeline and I got in the truck. And if he wasn't there, I would have walked the last 6 miles. It's just things that you learn from,
That's
right?
crazy, man. Yeah, that's nuts. I mean, Everest, ultra marathons, it's wild. I mean, so, it is though. I mean, so one of my goals for this year is, I've been on a running kick. Nothing long distance, nothing crazy.
Sure.
But my goal is this year with everything, social media, my business. I just started a new business, which is a social media management company. So, you have that. And then with exercise and fitness it just comes down to one thing: consistency. I always struggle with just being consistent. Like, I'm a really hard worker when it comes to working out. Like, I'll go in and I'll grind. Like, I can get my heart rate up and I will work out hard, but then I won't do it
Right.
again for another 12 days. And so it's just, so it's like, because I grew up and I had a good family, good household. And, my dad was really big on whatever you do, you work really hard at it. You work really hard at it, whether it's sports, whether it's working. So I did a lot of landscaping growing up. And I remember I could work. Like, I was a good worker,
Right.
but it's about the consistency. So this year, my goal is just to run every day.
I
365 days,
love that.
bro, just run every day. I don't know. I don't really know what the statistics on how that's good for your health, because I know you're supposed to,
Probably not.
probably not good for the knees, but it is though. It's about just being consistent with it. And again, it's not long miles. My minimum is 1 mile.
I
So
love that.
if I come down and I get sick, or if my son gets sick, or if there's something happening with my wife, or whatever the case may be, if I'm at the hospital because I have a sick son or whatever, run a mile around the hospital and call it a day.
Right.
Just keep that consistency up. But okay, back to you.
I
Uh,
love that. I
yeah,
have so much that everything I had, like you put a bow on anything. We could end the podcast because the biggest piece to walk away with is disgusting levels of consistency,
yep,
not mediocre levels of consistency. I mean, neurotic levels of consistency. And that doesn't mean running every single day if that's not what you want to be consistent with.
right,
That means picking what it takes for you
right,
to be consistent with. And that's my approach with social media. That's my approach with the calls. That's my approach with the appointments, the climbing. You pick the number,
yep,
and that number is etched in stone.
yep. And I'm the kind of person too that if I fail at what I set out to do, especially now because I've talked about it so much,
Yeah.
I'm on day like 35 of running every day, because I started a little bit before the new year, but
Good.
I don't know if I counted, some of those days, but I guess I did, because what is today? The 25th. Yeah, so I
25th.
guess I counted some of the days before. So, but anyways, yeah, you're right. And we will get into, consistency on social and in our business and stuff. But okay, so 2012, you do a 115-mile hike casually with no hiking training or anything. 10 years later, you decide that you're going to summit The whole thing. You're gonna just take the whole kahuna. So was there any training for that? Did you decide in 2021 or 2020? Like, explain how your mindset shifted in those 10 years and how you got ready for that.
Absolutely. So the mindset shifted because I knew I had to get the requisite skills to feel very competent. So I understand what everybody says about Mount Everest and people climbing it for you with the Sherpas and the support. I can't disagree with a lot of it because it is a very dialed in mountain and there is a lot of support. But whether you have zero experience or a buttload of experience, it's all on you to get to the top. Nobody's carrying you. But for me personally, I identify as a climber. Like if we went outside right now, I know how to set up a belay. I know how to rappel. I know how to handle a rope. And that's part of my identity that I take pride in. So I did a lot of climbing to lead up to it. And then it was the decision to say, you have to start getting the specific skills that allow you to feel worthy to be on the mountain. And that's for me personally. So that could be different for others. But I began to get some high altitude experience. So in 2019, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. That was the biggest mountain that I had climbed at that time, just about 20,000 feet.
Ooh,
Not a technical mountain. It's a hike. I did it with my mom. So it's very doable. My mom is very fit, don't get me
that's
wrong, but it's a hike.
yeah.
That was my first experience with the high altitude. And then after that, I COVID. So this is now we're in 2020. So the following year, it's like, let's level up a little bit more. I had scheduled to climb Denali or Mount McKinley in Alaska, arguably one of the hardest one of the hardest seven summits, if not the hardest, outside of Everest. And it got taken away from me because of COVID. So I didn't get to climb Denali. I fell off the wagon like a lot of people did during COVID. And then as soon as the world began opening up again, I said, what could I do to get me back on track to climb Everest? And in the background, I'm meeting my fiance, who's now my wife, the talks of starting a family,
Yep.
leaving to climb Mount Everest doesn't entirely jive with having a baby. So it's like all of these timelines that I'm trying to like work within. So
Right.
2020, so we fast forward to 2021. I went to Bolivia to climb in the Andes and bag a couple of peaks that are similar to Himalayan mountains. So a lot of fixed ropes. We weren't quite at 7,000 meters. So now we're touching about 21,000 feet. 21,000 feet is where they say, if you do okay, you're probably going to do okay trying to climb an 8,000 meter peak. I know I'm a feet guy, but with mountains, they do it in meters. So an
Yeah.
8,000 meter peak is 26,000 and up.
Okay.
So there's a category of mountains,
Hey.
including Mount Everest, that are called 8,000 meter peaks.
Okay. Wow.
There's 14 of them. I wanted to cut my teeth on something smaller than that to make sure that I was worthy. So I go to Bolivia. I have a really wonderful trip. I end up not summiting the mountain that I went out there to summit because we got lost, and we'll save that for another podcast. But I failed, I failed and it crushed me. But
Mm.
if you climb long enough, kind of like if you're in the business long enough, failure is not a failure. It's just part of the process to get you where you're going.
Right.
So I felt defeated. I felt torn up. But I remember thinking to myself as soon as I got home and sort of shook off the sadness, if failing in Bolivia was the purpose, if failing in Bolivia was only to get me to summit Mount Everest, it wasn't a failure at all.
Right.
It wasn't a failure at all.
I don't know if you're familiar with David Goggins. I
Oh,
was
absolutely.
I was gonna say I think someone like you is absolutely familiar. So, I was listening to, I don't know if you listened to Joe Rogan's podcast or not. Did you listen to the most recent one with David Goggins? Uh,
I might have heard clips, but I definitely have listened to like the older ones.
Okay. So, anyways, on this most recent one that he had, which was maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, I'm not sure, but David Goggins was talking about how he doesn't see failure as failure. He sees failure as attempts, which is huge. That's huge.
Facts.
It's huge. And when you think about it that way, right? Like I'm going to go climb Mount Everest, which is quite the venture, right? And so,
Right,
and along your way, but let's simplify this for everyone listening, right? Like anything that you strive to do, whether I want to do more deals, I want to have more closings, I want to set more appointments, I whatever it is, when you fail at it, because anything that's big enough to dream of, anything that's big enough to fail at is going to be worth it, and you are
right.
going to fail along the way. But it seems like a lot of people, and you can let me know if you agree with this, when they do fail at something, it discourages them dramatically for a lot of people.
Right,
Instead of looking at it like, I made an attempt at this, now I'm going to plan to make another attempt, I'm going to learn what I did wrong, and I'm going to make
right.
another attempt soon.
Well, I think you've nailed it. And I think even people like David Goggins, and I'm not anywhere on his level, but David is a human the same way we are humans. So to think that he is not affected, or to think I am not affected by failure, is a myth. The
Yeah.
difference is people who have high emotional intelligence, people who are really working on self growth, know that they cannot wallow in the failure.
Right.
Instead, they give themselves a period of time to
Right.
lick their wounds.
Mhm.
And when they're done with it, they're back.
Right.
And when you get started on that journey, it's not a 1 minute turnaround time. It applies to everything. A transaction goes sideways, you're a new to the business, it's going to ruin you for a whole week.
Right.
That's okay. It's your first time going through that. But the next time a transaction goes sideways, it better only be 3 days.
Right.
And by the time that you have some experience, it better be 30 minutes.
Right.
And then when you get to a place of like real production, when they go sideways, you give yourself 30 seconds
Right.
and you're back.
Yep.
So that's the way that you have to look at these things. It's okay to feel your feelings, but
Right.
you also have to be in control of them and tell yourself when enough is enough.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. David Goggins, man, that dude is a different breed. He really is. He to go through different buds of military and different trainings for Ranger School, and I really enjoy listening to some of the stuff that he says because it's so applicable to what we do, and
Right.
any industry, right? Anything that somebody's trying to accomplish, whether it's a business venture, whether it's a fitness venture. I mean, it's perspective, and his perspective on things is, it can get a little dark, it can get a little dark, which I like to be a happy person and enjoy life, but I
Yeah.
also want to be, this is what I tell my wife all the time, when I'm on my deathbed, someday I want to look back and I want to say no regrets. I became the best Bo that I could be, right? I'm not Chris, and Chris is not Bo, and we're two different people living
Right.
two different lives, but in our little world, are we the best that we can be? Are we living up to our potential? And that, dude, I mean, it really motivates me to not only really dive into what I want to accomplish, but also have the ability and strength to slow down and stop for a minute.
100%.
Because, the two people that I care about the most, they deserve a lot of my time as well,
Sure.
not just what I'm trying to achieve business wise and stuff. So yeah, man, it's crazy.
No, I think you've nailed it. And, you were talking about going into a dark place. David Goggins has talked about this. I think other people have talked about this. Winning is lonely. Big goals are lonely.
Yep.
And I don't think people recognize that what you're chasing after is what you are chasing after.
Right.
And nobody is really able to run at that speed with you. And training for Everest is just a small example of this, but nobody is wanting to wake up at 4 in the morning to go knock out 16 miles.
Yep.
Nobody wants to join me in the cryotherapy chamber. Nobody wants to be jump like I don't expect them to. And that's why it's isolating. And the businesses is the same way. Nobody wants to pick up the phone and do the work that it requires to hit the goals that they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Know that if it's your goal, you're going to have a table of one.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that
No.
because nobody, Tom Ferry, David Goggins, Joe Rogan, Bo and Chris, nobody is coming to save you.
Yep.
Nobody is giving you what you want.
Yeah.
You go get it.
Yep. It's so true. I mean, it really is true. And for me, I was having a conversation with some people, and this with social media, I talk to people a lot about that. And a lot of people, even in 2023, look at social media, when they hear it, they laugh and they say, this is not how business is done. Right. I've been doing business for 30, 40 years. Right. I hear, which is great. Congratulations. You had a good long career. That's awesome. Right.
Right.
But what got you here is not going to get you here, most likely. Right.
Right.
And so I totally agree with you. I think for me, it's inspiring to know that success and achieving your goals is going to be a lonely place, because I don't want to be with the group of people, right? I don't want to be in the crowd. I just don't.
Right.
And I never really have. And I know you have never either. And
Right.
people seem to mock. I mean, let's just call it what it is. People mock
100%.
the things that other people do. And the way I see it is, look,
100%.
I'm trying, right? I am trying to do something different, and I am happy with that. I have peace with that. And if I don't
Right.
do something with it and it ends up being a bust, then I tried, right? And so,
100%.
I mean, and you are the extreme example of this, right? I mean, on this podcast of Joe Rogan and David Goggins, they were talking about the best compliment that you can receive from a peer or somebody that you work with or work around is, Chris, man, you're crazy.
It's funny you say that because I used to be so offended when people used to call me intense. I'll never forget. There was one of these exercises and they were like, describe Chris in a few words. And multiple people said intense. And I associated intense negative. I
Mm,
was like, intense is not what you want to be. And then I laid in my bed thinking about my personality. And I
right.
said, you know what? I don't know any other speed than 0 or 120 miles an hour. I don't have a very good third gear. I don't know how to like be in a relationship where I'm not like passionately obsessed with whatever it is. I just don't know how to be lukewarm. So I am fucking intense. And I'm okay with that because that's who I am. And it's not going to change.
Yeah. No, I mean, it should intensify.
Right.
It should, and because I'm the same way. Not to your level, because we're
Nah,
talking,
man, we're different. It's just different.
it's just different, and it's true. But okay, Mount Everest, you're there, right? You show up and you're looking up at this thing. You hike the original 115 miles again.
No. So the
Okay.
second time around, I start at the village called Lukla. I start where everybody else starts.
Okay. 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 So you
And I
started.
did it with my mom. My mom came with me.
Your mom summited the.
No, she wishes. She
Come
doesn't
on,
like the
mom.
ice
That's
that
crazy.
mom made it to base camp with me. So
Okay.
mom flew with me to Lukla and she hiked all the way to base camp. So she's a strong one.
Okay. So Lukla to base camp. We already know that. What is the other village?
Jiri,
Okay. So we already know that Lukla to base camp is going to be less than Jiri.
significantly. It's
Okay.
about 9 days.
Okay. So we got Lukla. Okay. We got Lukla to base camp, which takes about 9 days. Okay. So you make it to base camp. What does that look like when you make it to base camp? And how long do you stay at base camp before you really decide that you're off?
Very good question. So you get to base camp and you are grossly, I feel bad for the hikers because you get to base camp and you're kind of expecting to see Mount Everest in all its glory and just, I made it to base camp. And it's just it looks like hell. It's just an ice labyrinth of tents and it looks bleak. It looks really miserable. So for everyone that finishes their trip there, I kind of think that they should go do another hike where you could see more beauty because the finish line
Yeah.
is not that pretty unless you're going to the top. So you get to base camp, all the hikers leave at this point, and you're only left with the people who are going to for the summit. And you spend only a few days there before you start making rotations up the mountain. And what I'll describe to you is very similar to every single mountain that is more than 8,000 meters, meaning more than 26,000 feet. It's too high for you to go from the bottom to top without having to come down and allow your body to adjust to the altitude.
Wow.
Yeah, so the most dangerous part when it comes to climbing, or one of the most dangerous parts, is altitude sickness,
Yeah.
cerebral edema or pulmonary edema. It's just nasty shit that you don't want to experience that can kill you. So in order to avoid that, you'll go up the mountain, allow yourself to build these red blood cells, come back down the mountain, rest at base camp, and then do it multiple times. So I spent about, I would have to look at the calendar, but I would guess that I spent about 5 weeks at base camp going up and down the mountain and resting before making my final summit push.
So you go up to kind of experience this change, then you come back down to recover. The to the point where you went up before you turned around and came back, how much farther from that point was it to summit?
Yeah, you're asking great questions, Bo. I've so many people have asked me these questions, or they ask me questions, but not nearly as like poignant as you. So you're like, these are really good questions. Base camp is about 17,800, and camp one, I want to say, was at a just shy of 20,000. So you only went about 2,000 feet your first rotation. Camp two is at about 21,000, so another 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
Camp three is at about 24,000. Camp four, which is called the death zone, just because it's above, is at 26,000. So those are where the camps are, and you're kind of moving up those camps and coming back down before you
Oh,
touch each one of them briefly before
right.
you make to the top.
So I see here, this is just on Adventure Consultants on Guiding
Great company.
Everest. Okay, so Guiding Everest since 92. I want to make a couple different notes here just because it's interesting. So difficulty level high. That's all bolded. And then fitness level very high. That's literally what it says on their website. But on the website here, it talks about elevation, right? And so the total on here, it says 29,000 feet.
Yeah, the summit, I believe, is just over 29,000 feet.
Yeah, 29,035 feet. Okay, so
The cruising altitude of a jet.
really?
I think a jet flies between 29 and 32. So yeah, it's about the altitude of a Boeing 747.
Wow. Okay. So explain how you felt when you made it to the top. So we're going back and forth, which just sounds like absolute torture. Like that would be, I mean, my wife and I I was gonna say big hikers, but I can't say this on this podcast. So
You can.
but we hike for fun and we have our baby and we take him with us all over. And but the thought of making it like halfway up say a 6 mile hike, going 3 miles up and then turning around, going back to the car and then going the rest of the way, like just sounds like miserable torture to me. So
It's hard.
and that's crazy. So there was something real quick. I want to go back. You said
Please.
something chamber.
Oh, a cryotherapy chamber.
Cryotherapy.
Uh,
Yeah, what is that?
So it's a great tool to use for recovery. Cryotherapy is where they put you in one of those cold boxes,
Okay.
and you'll see two different versions. Some of them are cooled with like nitrogen, and then you can't put your head in it. So if you've ever seen those videos of people in a box, but their head is out,
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the newer versions is a metal box where your whole body is in it. And I think it brings the temperature to negative 120 degrees
Oh,
Fahrenheit. I mean, it's so cold that you can't be in it for more than 5 minutes. And one benefit is muscle recovery. The second benefit for doing things like this is mental toughness and cold exposure.
right.
So I developed a relationship with a cryotherapy gym in San Diego, and they hooked me up with a membership. And I would do that twice a week. And I would stand in this chamber for 5 minutes, just getting my mind ready for what I was about to experience. I mean, I said it earlier, my family's from Egypt. I am not a tough guy in the cold, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to accomplish what I want. So, yeah, I did a lot of cold exposure getting ready for Everest, which I had never done on any mountain leading up to it, because my goal on Everest was not to survive. I wasn't just trying to get through it. My
Right.
goal was to thrive. So,
Mm,
what do I need to do to not just live this experience, but to really have a
right.
meaningful experience on this mountain?
Yeah.
And that's why I look back at it so fondly. Like, I'm so flattered by all of this, but I had a lot of fun, Bo. I
Yeah.
had a lot of fun. And if you were to ask me to do it again, I would. I would try to do it with no oxygen this time. I loved it. So I really think that's like a mindset thing is when people show up to the office to get on the phone, are you getting in your chair in a miserable mood saying, I'm about to suffer through this next 2 hours?
Right.
Or are you getting behind the phone saying, I'm about to play this next 2 hours?
Yeah.
These people have never heard a voice like mine.
Yeah.
These people do not know excitement like mine.
Yeah.
And that right there is 90% of the battle,
Well, what were we talking about just a few minutes ago? Perspective,
right?
right?
That's
And
100%.
100%. Okay, so side note, the cold plunge challenges are nothing for you then.
They suck for me. No, they're equally as hard. They are equally as hard.
You do the cold
Um,
plunges?
I got super into it at one point where it wasn't the cold plunge because I didn't have access to it that conveniently, but I did go through a phase where after every shower, the final 60 seconds was ending on cold water. And I would time a 60-second like on the coldest setting and just full body in it at the end of every single shower.
So was that helpful?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna start doing that. I'm gonna start doing that at the end of my showers after my runs because I run at night, right? I run in it when it's cold. I mean, not on purpose, but I just run at night.
Right.
It's cold. So
Right. Of
but once I get home, usually I like to take a nice hot shower with a nice cup of
course you do.
water. So, but at the end of that, once I get all cleaned and everything, I'm gonna turn it on cold and I'm gonna do
It's
it
gonna
for
wake your ass up.
okay, so back to Everest and then we'll start to move on to some other topics. But yeah, no, go ahead.
You asked me about the summit and I didn't even answer you.
Oh yeah, so okay, yeah. You make it to the final, camp or whatever, and you're getting ready to make it to the summit. Talk to us about that.
So the final summit push starts from camp 4. So the end is moves pretty quickly. So I left camp 3 at about 5 or 6 a.m., which is at 24,000 feet. I got to camp 4 at about 10 a.m., which is about 26,000 feet. And that's the staging area for the summit. At that final camp, there is very little, you cannot spend a lot of time there. Your
Okay.
body is beginning to to eat away at itself. It's not a very forgiving place.
Right.
So I got to Camp 4 at about 10 a.m. And fortunately, the weather was decent. I didn't even roll out my sleeping bag in the tent. I'm in a down suit. I'm in my full down suit. So I just laid on the ground in my tent from
Wow.
about 10 a.m. We left for the summit at 7:30 p.m. So I rested that day, just laying in my tent with an oxygen mask, eating snacks as much as I could, pretty much just getting my mind right for what was about to come next.
Yeah.
And personally, I had a really successful trip leading up to that point. So I felt confident. I was like, unless something goes really wrong tonight, this is happening. Like this time tomorrow, I touched the top of the world. So I was in a good place mentally, physically, spiritually. Everything was coming together. And because of the crowds on Everest, because of the attention that it's been getting these last few years, there can be lines, there can be like groups of people that are creating backlogs on these fixed ropes. Because you got to understand, everybody is climbing the same rope. So, because of those crowds, and because we weren't entirely sure, you just never know how long things are going to take you. My Sherpa Dawa and I had decided to start at 7:30 p.m. I'm not here to toot my own horn, but I was moving well, and we were passing groups of people. And by midnight, we stopped and was like, "We're going to summit in the middle of the night." Like, you're trying to time it to get to the top of the world at the sunrise. Like, who wants to miss it, right? You want
Yeah.
to be there at sunrise. And it was probably midnight. We're at this place called the Balcony. And he said, "Chris, if we don't take a break for an hour, you're going to summit in the dark." And I'm kind of weighing my options. I'm like, do I really want to sit out in the cold for an hour? I know I have plenty of oxygen, but like, how bad do I want the sunrise? And it took me a total of like 15 seconds to say, sunrise, sundown, pitch black. I don't give a shit. I'm touching the top of this mountain and I'm not waiting for the sunrise. Like, we're going. And that was it. So we ended up summiting at 3:15 or 3:13 a.m. It was a full moon, so the sky was completely illuminated. I'm
Wow.
standing on the top of the world. I can see China from one side, completely illuminated by city lights. I can
Wow.
see Nepal on the other side, complete darkness, just mountaintops. And it was, I don't have words, Bo, because it was something I had dreamed of for so long. What I didn't expect is seeing dead bodies right before I touched the top. So
Yeah.
everybody talks about the dead bodies. I knew that I knew they were out there. I knew they were out there, but I didn't know where exactly they were going to be.
Right.
And it's really humbling and very sobering. And unfortunately, it's not what you want to experience right before you have this moment, but it is what it is. So
Yeah.
I
True.
saw these bodies right before the summit, which is very unfortunate. And the last push, so I'm 100 meters from the top of the world, and my Sherpa Dawa says to me, Chris, why don't you get in the front so you can summit first, and I'll be right behind you. And I was like, let's do this. So I get in front of him. We take a couple steps forward, and we're the first ones on the top of the world. There's nobody else there. We are the first ones.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I stopped and I just said to myself, this is my Sherpa's fifth summit.
Oh,
This is
wow.
going to be the fifth time he tops the top of the world. And this is his whole life.
Yeah.
And I said, is my dream to touch the top of the world, or is my dream to touch the top of the world alone? Or is my dream to be the first one?
Ooh.
And it didn't take much time for me just to stop. And I said, Dawa, I think it would be better if you touch the top first by yourself. I think you deserve it more than me. And I really feel good about that decision because I remember switching places. I let him get in front of me again. We get to the top. I stop walking. I give him the summit alone. And I'll never forget him going down to his knees, begin praying. I just remember seeing him on the top of the world alone, thinking to myself, this really means a lot to him.
Wow.
I don't think he'll ever have this opportunity ever again.
No.
And that was like, I felt like that was really significant to me. And then I got to the top, just 1 minute later. And the first thing I did was pull out my little Garmin InReach, and I messaged my wife and I said, "We made it. We touched the top of the world."
That's so cool.
Technology.
So did you, I mean, did you save those messages?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Wow.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was like, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, I mean, what a story. Now, yeah, I mean, people do discuss, that there are dead bodies on the way to the top. What was that like? Was there ever a moment in your head, will I not make it? Especially in the beginning, because you did explain how, as you were going, you were feeling good, right? You were moving good, you were clipping. But
Yeah.
in the beginning stages, I mean, that had to have been a real fear. Like,
Ye-
you hear about people not making it, like
Yeah.
they
A
die at the
lot of
top,
people not making it.
which
A
is
lot of
scary.
people not
That's
making it.
like that's
Yeah.
scary.
It is. So the only fears I had a lot of fear before going to say, are you ready? Like, do you have what it really takes?
Yeah.
Once I got there, I was so dialed in that I had no doubts.
Mm,
Like, I really mean that. Like, I really had the only doubt that I had was for things that were beyond my control. And there's a lot beyond my control. One of them being COVID. COVID was still running rampant on the mountain. So COVID was really delaying or derailing people's plans. And I remember when there was COVID outbreaks and COVID scares, I had a tremendous amount of anxiety and I had a tremendous amount of fear that it was going to get taken away from me because of something like COVID.
right.
But as I was doing the work, like when I was out there climbing, I mean this with the utmost respect for the mountain because I'm out there trying to make friends with the mountain. I don't believe in conquering it, or people are like, make that your bitch. It's like, nah, it's like you're trying to be one with the mountain. It's giving me this opportunity. And with that in mind, I really just felt, I mean, I did everything. Like I wish you could do this with work, but imagine waking up in the morning, getting ready to go to the office, and having the idea that if I don't bring my A game, there's a possibility I don't come home.
Right. That would change a lot.
Not many, yeah, then there's not a lot of things in life that can keep you on the short end of the stick like that. And I remember training for Everest and that being something that was constantly echoing in the back of my head is all I can control is the preparation. All I can control is what I do. If you don't get up when the alarm goes off at 3:45, you are reducing the likelihood of success.
Right.
And if you can keep yourself that kind of accountable, when it's game day is easier than practice. And I'm not trying to take this lightly. Everest was hard. It was a lot of work.
For sure.
But you know what's harder? The preparation. You know what's harder? Like I was physically gone for 2 months, but I was mentally absent for 9 months from my family.
Right.
And we're talking about goals, but it really ties to you having to make sure that your family is dialed into whatever you're chasing. Because
Right.
if they don't support you or they don't know why is dad gone 12 hours a day or why is dad at the dinner table, but I feel like he's somewhere else, it's just, you're not going to be successful.
Right.
So your inner circle really needs to be on board with you. And I think that's for any big goal. So
Percent.
I don't know what the question was. I hope that answered
Oh,
it.
yeah. I mean, I love that this is why I could ask nothing more of a podcast episode to go in so many different directions with the topics. I love
Right.
that. So,
Me too.
um, I don't know what the question was either. I know, well, I mean, we were just talking about summiting, right?
Right.
And how that made you feel. Now, now you turn around and come home, right?
Right.
You start heading down. What was that process like? Was that because it's I don't know, man. I'm trying to put it into words on what my question is, but how was that? experience coming back down? Was that challenging at all?
Yeah, so physically coming down was one of the most taxing days that I had. Coming down from the summit back to camp 2 was arguably, it was the only day that I remember thinking to myself, you better get you better really dial in where your head is at,
Yeah.
because you are disgustingly close to be making a mistake.
Hmm.
And making a mistake coming down is the worst place to make a mistake.
Right.
You're exhausted, you're fatigued, gravity is working with you, not against you, like going up.
Right.
And I remember the fatigue in my legs coming down being more than I had ever experienced, and thinking to myself, you really need to be present. Like, you really need to be present. And I'll never forget, I was on the Lhotse face. Lhotse is the fourth biggest mountain in the world, and you pass by it going to Everest, and the face is like this. And I'll never forget, taking I was trying to take off my buff, not paying attention to the way my gear was, and my goggles fell off.
Mm.
Fortunately, I had another set of goggles, but I remember my goggles fell off, and I see them hit the side of the mountain and
Holy.
gone. I'm talking about, these goggles were a rocket ship, and if they hit somebody, it would have taken off their head.
Whoa.
And very quickly, you learn you don't want to be chasing, like, you better not be sliding. So there was a couple moments coming down that the
Oh,
fatigue was real. Like, the fatigue was very real. And, you don't share some of these details with the family when it's happening, because they don't need to hear that.
no.
Like the avalanche scare. I mean, there's definitely stories that I did not tell any of them until I'm home,
Right.
because it's not helpful.
No.
It's just not helpful for where they're at. So
Right.
physically coming down was hard. The hardest part, and this is me being transparent, I've never shared this before on a recording. I did not prepare myself for the emotions that I was going to deal with after it was done.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, go into that.
Yeah, I mean it very respectfully, because I don't want to come off ungrateful or unappreciative. It's like, this fucking guy climbed Mount Everest and he's talking about his feelings coming home.
Yeah.
It's really hard to wrap your head around finishing something that you've worked so hard to accomplish. And I never prepared for the emotions that I'd be dealing with after summiting. And transparently, from when I got home in June up until my baby moon in December, I went to Hawaii middle of December with my wife before the baby comes.
Awesome.
I don't want to say that I was depressed, but I was dealing with some feelings that I'd never experienced before. I was dealing with sort of some, like, darkness that I'd never experienced before. And it was tough because all of these opportunities are beginning to present themselves. Tom Ferry invites me to get on the stage at the summit, one of the biggest real estate conferences in the world, and everybody wants to hear about Mount Everest and the success and this and that. And as I'm on the stage, I can't help but feel like I'm an imposter, like I'm a phony, because I wasn't in the headspace that you would expect to be in after a win. But I mean, I don't have kids yet, but I imagine it's like when your kid is being sent off to college. You're very proud, but you're really sad to see them go. And I had a lot of feelings about wishing that I would have failed summiting, that I wish I didn't make it to the top, because it would have allowed me to go back. I had a lot of thoughts about wishing I would have waited until I was older to do this, because then I would have had this dream that I still get to look forward to. It's kind of like a void in your heart that you don't know how to fill in yet. And that was really hard for me. And I think it's not unique. I think a lot of people suffer from that. I think there's, like, even science to support the chemistry that's going on when you accomplish a big goal.
Right.
But I didn't train to deal with that. And
Right.
nobody told me to get ready for that. And I mean, I'm a human like everybody else. So I've worked through it. I feel much better now. I'm probably on a month and a half of what I feel like is the new me. And what I learned, or one thing that yeah, what I learned is I think we should have really big goals.
Mhm.
And I know everyone's like, yeah, well, like, of course, you climb Mount Everest. But what I mean by that is we are all so capable that we will get what we're going after sooner than we think if we're really going after it.
Right.
So, my advice to anybody, because these feelings are real, whatever it is, like, I mean, you want to run a marathon, it's going to happen. Like you're going to finish your goal of running 365, and then what's going to happen after that? You're still going to wake up the next morning. So
Exactly.
or it's like I want to sell, like I want to do 144 transactions this year, but I'm still going to wake up January 1st and get back to work. So what I've really realized, or what I'm telling myself now, is whatever your goal is needs to be fucking massive,
Right.
beyond comprehension massive,
Right.
because you're going to get it sooner than you think.
Right.
And then what next?
Right. You know, that's so big. And I think I just saw something about this about, make your goals really big. Right. And there's so many different positive things that come out of that. And number one being just the journey, the chase, the hunt, like I, someone that I listen to a lot and follow, not religiously, but I follow him once in a while, is Gary Vaynerchuk, right?
Oh, yeah.
And his Gary Vaynerchuk's big dream is to buy the New York Jets,
Right.
right? And he's like, and he talks about this exact concept that we're talking about. It's not necessarily owning the Jets that fuels him. It's that journey of making it there and
100%.
what he learns along the way. And it's just like what you're talking about, make your, and I totally understand, or I can understand what you're talking about, as far as the feelings and emotions of after completing Everest, right? I mean, because the question I'm sure in your head was, well, now what?
That's exactly that. That's the entire question.
Now what? I've had this dream of doing Everest for years, and you do it, and this can be anybody's dream, right? You make the dream, and Everest is not a small dream,
Right.
right? Everest is a big dream, and you accomplished it, and now it's like, now what? Which, I think that is a huge sign that God, the universe, is telling you, like, you have some big plans, that are bigger than Everest, my friend. I
Right.
mean, it's true, and so, yeah.
What you say about the process, I think, is so good, because the reality of having goals forces you to be disciplined.
Right.
And the ironic part is when you have idle time, you end up not being like productive. But
Right.
when you have a lot of shit to get done and feel overwhelmed, how is it that you manage to get everything done? I mean, that's the irony of, working with the team. How is it that my transaction coordinator cannot make a mistake when we have 20 pending deals, but as soon as we have 6, it's
Yeah.
mistake left and right? And
Right.
the reason is because they have time to make mistakes.
Right.
And that's what I look back with Everest and really having things to motivate you to work hard is, why is it that I was able to make more calls, set more appointments when I had to do 2 or 3 workouts a day?
Right.
Because I only had so much time to do it, and I'm forced to show up. So the process is everything, and Everest is the best example of it, because I spent 30 minutes on the top of the world. That's it. I
Mm.
spent 10 years chasing it. I
Yeah.
spent 2 months climbing it,
Right.
30 minutes at the top for a photo.
Yeah.
It's not the summit. It's not the goal. It's not the New York Jets.
Right.
It's the road to get there.
It's the hunt. It really, yeah, absolutely. Which should inspire a lot of people. I think obviously, your story is super inspiring. I think
Thank you.
a lot of what Gary Vee talks about is inspiring, but you have a lot of people who do a lot of really cool things, right, in the world. And so I think for people as individuals, you can research and you can find out and listen to on podcasts all these people have done amazing things. But when are we as individuals going to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what is my big goal? What am I going to accomplish? What am I going to chase? Right? And that's the big question for people is what am I going to chase? And I feel like
Absolutely.
that gives people purpose and that gives people drive. Whether your goal is to have the greatest Pokemon collection in the world, right? Whatever your
Right.
goal is, or whether it's to hike Everest, I think it's super important to have something that you chase and something that you're not going to accomplish in a year, right? That's going
100%.
to be something that's going to take you a long time.
100%.
I love that. I love that because it's
Thanks.
just it's super inspiring. It's the way I feel about the things that I'm doing. The problem with me is that I don't have a clear goal, right? I don't have a clear something that I'm chasing. And I think that I figured myself out relatively good that like I'll just be chasing it forever. I don't think that I'll ever like be like, all right, I've made it. Like
Right.
I feel like I just enjoy the chase more than anything. I enjoy the hunt of, I this is just a side note that goes into this. Growing up, I did a lot of fishing, right? So I fished rivers in Colorado and stuff. And my dad and I did that, and it was our bonding thing. And my dad and I are really close. He was the best man at my wedding. It's so
I love that.
yeah, man. So it's cool. So we spent a lot of time fishing. And one of the things that I was notorious for as a little kid was not being able to stop. And it wasn't,
Mm.
I want to catch fish. I want to catch fish. It was, I have to know what's around that bend up there. What is around that corner? Right. And it's, what could it be the perfect hole? Could it be the perfect eddy? We call it, an eddy is where the river's coming. There's a big rock in the middle. And on the other side, there's that pool of still water.
Mm.
That's an eddy, right? And the fish chill there to stay away from the current for a minute, right? And so where is that big eddy going to be at around that corner? And that's how I look at life. I look
I
at
love that.
like, I started up this new social media management business, and it's just another thing, right, that I can work on and pursue and build and make bigger, but what's around that corner once I get to this part of it, right?
Right.
What's, what if this, what if that? And I am not the kind of person who's going to be, 80, 90, 100 years old and be like, what if I
I
try?
wish.
Right?
Right.
I'm going to find
And it's so parallel to the competition against yourself. So I think what you said really reminds me of the idea of who are you competing against?
right.
And when you see, that's why podcasts are so wonderful, or reading books are wonderful, because perspective, or that's why I love coaching, or the Tom Ferry ecosystem, is when you are in the room with somebody who is selling billions of dollars of worth of real estate,
Right.
you don't look at them with envy, you look at them as human.
Right.
So when I'm standing in a room with these people, I don't look at them and say, why not me? I say, wow, I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. And I think that's important for people to recognize as far as like the limitation or what's around that bend. What are you capable of?
Right.
What is your threshold? And I know it's easier said than done, but nobody should be looking at this video and comparing what they're doing to you. It's like, damn, Bo's already started another company. Or
Yeah.
damn, this guy Chris is like climbing Mount Everest and selling all these houses. It's like, no, the
Right.
competition is you against you.
Right.
And with that goal, that's something that I talk about with my wife, because she really is much more balanced than I am.
Same.
She really is like, what is the point of doing all this if we don't have time? And one thing for me, which I need to be mindful of, is my pursuit of finding what I am capable of. What is my threshold?
Right.
And I think it's beautiful because it causes you to push,
Right.
but it's also dangerous for people that don't have a clear goal because you will move until your feet bleed.
Right.
And what's the point, right? But for me, the point, and it's all within reason, is what am I capable of? Like, what am I really capable of? And you
Really.
don't use other people's success as competition, but you use it as a metric of being able to see like what is possible.
Right.
So they sold 1,000 houses. That means it can be done.
Right.
How did they do that? Do I have what it takes to be able to do that?
Right.
This guy from Southern California climbed Mount Everest. Like, I want to take the allure away from it because there's nothing mystical.
Right.
You just got to go do it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, man. It's so true. That what you said there at the last thing you said, just do. Man, it really is that simple. I mean, end a podcast, right? I mean, just go out if you want to start making more online content. Nobody cares that you don't feel like you have enough hair, that you feel like you look too old, that you look like you feel too young. Like nobody
Right.
cares, right? And it's so hard for people to get past that feeling of I'm going to be judged by people and stuff.
Right.
So we'll get into that. I want to wrap up the Mount Everest thing. So, again, congratulations, dude. I mean,
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you've heard it
Thank
a
you.
million times, but I have to say it. I mean,
Thank
it's so
you.
awesome. And I loved, hearing the story about it. I mean, it's just amazing. So,
Thank you.
what is in your real estate career after completing Everest, how has Everest directly correlated into how you look at your business today?
It's a great question. What it's shown me is anything is possible if you're willing to do what it takes to get the result.
Right.
Everest, selling real estate, selling social media whatever you're going to do
Right.
is doable if you're willing to do the work.
Right.
And that's like a big distinction that I've been embodying lately. It's not about working hard. It's about doing whatever it takes.
Right.
Plain and simple. So for me, what it's really shown me is I want to sell 144 houses.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be easy. If
Right.
it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Boom.
Am I willing to do whatever it takes?
Right.
Whatever it takes. And I don't think people acknowledge that. So I did whatever it took to climb this mountain. I
Right.
left my family for 2 months. I spent a buttload of money. I took a ton of time training.
Yeah.
Are you committed to whatever you want with that same level of discipline? And it's not as easy when it comes to people's personal lives in the business, but that
Right.
is something that I've walked away with. So, like with the social media content, are you willing to do what it takes to be that person who shows up consistently? And consistently doesn't mean you're Chris Benjamin or Bo.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you have to post 2 times a day, 5 days a week.
Right.
That means maybe for you, it's showing up 3 days a week.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe for you, it's learning to find your voice by doing TikTok dances with trending audio. I'm not telling you that's the way, that's the magic sauce, but if that's what you have to do to build the muscle, that's like your hike leading up to whatever you're going to do next,
Right.
do it. So, Everest, I mean, it's all full circle. It's translated to my business in the matter of perspective. There
Yeah.
is nothing that we can't do if we want it bad enough. And
Yeah.
if you can't do it, it's because you don't want it bad enough.
Yeah. Which, something that people don't talk about enough is that's okay.
100%.
Some
100%.
that's okay. Like if you're okay doing 2 deals a month, right?
Exactly.
That's okay. You don't have to be Chris that's super motivated and super driven, and you don't have to go out and start up new businesses, and you don't have to climb Mount Everest. You don't have to have the same goals. If you're okay making enough money to support the lifestyle that you like, which is to go to San Diego from Arizona or from Kentucky and hang out on the beach in a relatively cheap hotel and you're 100% satisfied with that, then mazel tov to you, my friend.
100%. a
Yeah.
hundred percent, because that goal of getting to say I sold 144 houses doesn't mean shit if you haven't acknowledged what that process looks like. So I'm not trying to say anybody should be doing what I'm doing because I don't have it dialed in.
Right.
The last 4 days, I haven't left the office before 9:30. I'm not proud of that. I'm like really not proud of that. I haven't seen my wife in 3 days. Like, I'm not advocating that I'm doing it right. What I am advocating is I know what it takes and I'm obsessed with accomplishing it. And
Right.
if you do not have a clear understanding of what kind of work your goal is going to require of you, you fucked up.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm
100%.
sorry. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry to be that transparent, but that's the reality. So if you want to climb Mount Everest to take the photo at the top,
Yeah.
you're in for a rude awakening.
Right.
Or if you want to sell a bunch of houses to get on the magazine cover and like have Tom Ferry pat you on the back and like cash a bunch of checks, you
Right.
fucked up.
Yep.
Because that road is unforgiving. And
Yeah.
that road means that you're not doing what you want to be doing all the time.
Well, and you know this, and you'll agree to this 100%. But if that's the reason that if you want to climb Mount Everest to take the picture, there's no way you're accomplishing Mount Everest. No way.
Exactly.
Right. And so,
Exactly.
and I think that that can be translated to anything and everything as far as goals and ambitions and everything. That's why it is important. Like my wife, she's great. She is my rock, through everything. And she's really good about just being content with where she is. Right. And I'm awful at that. Like my
Right.
family tells me all the time, like, you need to be grateful and you need to be content with where you're at. Right. Whether it's okay, you're making good money, you da 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 da, whatever it is, right? You need to
Right.
be content. And for me, it's like 100% agree. I do need to be content
Right.
and I do need to be grateful, 100%. But at the same time, like in my brain, I am wired to believe that no matter what I do, it's not, I can do more.
100.
Right?
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing,
Me
but
either.
I'm with you. It's finding the balance, and maybe that's why God put really special partners in our life,
Yes.
because that is the equal struggle. Is be proud of what you've done. However, if it wasn't for the chip on my shoulder,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be pushing so hard.
Right. I just don't, like you talked about it before. I just don't know another speed. Like I've tried to say, I actually haven't even tried. I just can't. I can't get there, and again, like everybody's at a different speed, right? Like you're at a
Right.
different speed than I am, and I'm at a different speed than my wife, and blah blah blah. But it's still our speed, and for you and I and people who do want to do more with what they're doing, it's that level of speed is hard for people to understand, which means it's hard to have conversations with people about it. Because then you do get the comments of, man, Bo, you're crazy, or Chris, like that's insane, man. You're intense. You've heard
Right.
it. And
Right.
that's why we go back to what we were talking about initially was this stuff is lonely.
Correct. Correct. And not everybody has to agree with you, and not everybody has to understand. Your family needs to be on board. And
Yeah.
beyond that,
Well, and
everybody
let's
else.
and let's define family. Right. Your family is the people who you wake up with and go to,
Right.
whether you have a spouse or whatever the case may be. It's like the direct people, right? Because you may have a
Agreed.
cousin who's constantly, ripping on you on Instagram or talking
Right.
to other family members about how, wow, he thinks he's all that or whatever the case may be,
Right.
which is dangerous. Sometimes
Right.
the closest people to you that you think are close are the most toxic,
A hundred
but
percent.
what you're talking about, like I said, whether it's a spouse or whatever it is, so in my case and in your case, it's is my wife on board? And
Right.
does she support what I'm doing? And if the answer is yes to both of those, then I'm all in. Like,
Right.
oh, she may not understand it all the time just
Right.
because I can't expect her to. But
But
as
she
long as
supports you.
she supports and she's on board, I'm all in, full steam
Yep.
ahead, you know?
Yeah, you said it right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, okay, so let's dive into let's dive into real estate and social media, right?
Yeah,
Like I said in the
absolutely.
beginning, Chris, everybody absolutely kills the social media game.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
did you always have a video first mindset when it came to social media? Did you always believe in social media? And if not, like when did all of this really start to become your thing?
Yeah, I did not believe in social media because coming from a legal background, I
Mm,
thought it was inappropriate for the consumer to see my personal life. I mean, I'm buttoned up right now, but I mean, like if you go on my Instagram, you'll see I have a neck tattoo, I'm sleeved down. I just didn't think that I wanted the world to know me like that.
right,
And in 2018, I got into this business, and my mom was already coaching with Tom Ferry. And she took me to an event, and Tom was on the stage saying exactly what he's saying on the stage today: make videos,
yeah,
make videos. And a new agent knows that they're not bringing a lot to the table. So
right,
I was prospecting, I was a showing agent, I was helping the team the way that I could. But I had said to myself when I saw him on stage say that, I said, all right, I control this. I can put forth some effort into this. I'm
yeah,
going to do it. And I started very simply. I started making one video once a week religiously. And if you were to scroll through my feed, what you're going to see is that I used to just grab a piece of paper that has a graph printed on it. It was always from like Keeping Current Matters. And I just used to hold the piece of paper and I used to just point at the piece of paper. I mean, this is 2018, so it's not even that long ago, but there was no Instagram green screen. I wasn't outsourcing people. It was literally just hold this piece of paper and talk. And
right,
I did that every week, non negotiably. I make one, I post one, I did my job. And I
right,
felt good about that. And that became the machine for, I don't know, honestly, maybe, I mean, I didn't take off super fast, maybe a year and a half. In the
right,
background, it was just once a week. That's like all I thought I could do. It was all I felt comfortable doing. I was helping Nahid, my mom, with her social media. So I was still very active, but it wasn't me. And
right,
then I just said, enough is enough. Let's really like, I like making it.
right.
Being a trial attorney, being in a courtroom, I mean, I enjoy performing. I want to speak. I mean, I'm giving you like no opportunity for chit chat because I'm like, I just talk a lot.
Yeah. No,
So
that's great.
I enjoyed it. So 2020, I started outsourcing my media. I hired people to help me, and I made the conscious decision, whether it was right or wrong. And I'm one of those people that when I commit to something, I really commit. I
Right.
said, you're showing up every single day. So at that moment in time, I said, you are making at least 20 videos a month because you're going to show up online Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
period.
Right. Okay. So, I talk to a lot of people, I'm in a sales position, like we had mentioned, to where my job is to really dive in and work with realtors on whatever they're needing help with. And so I've really tried to hone in on social media and video. And what I have found is that the majority of realtors, we're not even talking outside business owners. That's why I started up this other business of mine, because the opportunity of helping people, right? But for realtors, right, most don't want to do it. And the reason is I've learned that there's three big objections to social media for realtors. And it's I don't know how is number one. Number two is I don't have time, right? And number three is, and this is more so for my area, but this is not my demographic for social media, right? And so I'm sure, I don't know if you have that, those comments where you're at, but it's true.
Absolutely.
And so, I really would like to try to provide as much value during this little section as we can for other people, right? So
Absolutely.
for you, talking to other realtors who just, they know, right? They know at this point that they need to be making video,
Right.
but they're just not comfortable. They don't know how,
Right.
or whatever the case, or they, this is another big one. They don't believe that it's real,
Right.
right? They don't believe that they could actually get business through Instagram or
Right.
through TikTok or through YouTube Shorts or whatever platform we want to talk about. So, what is your thoughts on the people who just don't feel comfortable doing it? What would be your suggestions to them to just,
Yeah.
and this whole podcast has been about whatever you want to do. And if it's something
Right.
that you know that you need to do, it is just about doing. But
Right.
sometimes that's just not enough.
Correct. So I mean, I could try to break them down into each question because there was like four of them there. But let's talk about this. We'll start with the first one because it's at the top of my head and it's probably the most powerful, is not wanting to do it.
Yes.
Let me ask you, do you think that the janitor at Buffalo Wild Wings wants to clean up the shit mess after the football game that everybody left in that bathroom?
No.
Or do you think that the dental hygienist wants to clean the crust out of that motherfucker's teeth who look like shit?
Nope.
You don't have to be, and I said this on the stage, you don't have to be in the mood to do something.
Hmm.
Doing something will put you in the mood to do more.
Hmm.
People are too comfortable with their feelings.
Hmm.
People do not want to embrace that it's okay to be a little uncomfortable. It's okay to not be in the mood to pick up the phone.
Hmm.
But doing the action will allow you to get in the mood and
Yeah.
to do more of that action.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easy when you pick up the camera at first. It's not supposed to be. And you're not going to want to do it. But it's just like anything else. When you put your shoes on and close the door behind you, you don't want to go running. Everything is hurting.
Yeah.
Like for the first 20 minutes, it's like, what's wrong with my back? What's wrong with my knees? I think something's wrong with my arch in my heel. Like something is going wrong. And then 20 minutes goes by, you're like, all right, we're running, baby.
Proven. Yeah.
We're cruising.
Yeah.
Content is the same way.
Yeah.
You have to force yourself
Yeah.
to get past not wanting to do something to get yourself in the mood to do something. That's number one.
Yeah. Okay. So going right off of that, if that's for the people who don't want to do it.
Yep.
There's still people out there and people who may watch this who say, okay, Chris and Bo, I've been doing this for a minute, right? I've been doing this real estate thing for a minute. I don't believe that people will see a video of mine and that will correlate into me getting new business, right? So talk about that.
Right. So for anybody that does not intend on being in the business for the next 5 years, don't make videos.
Yep.
If you're retiring in the next 3 to 5 years, don't make videos.
Yeah.
If you expect to be doing whatever you're doing for a long period of time,
Yeah.
making content is just one aspect of the business that you need to begin making part of the process, that you need to make part of your flow. And what I tell people that don't believe videos work is the same thing that I would tell them about anything else in life.
Yeah.
If you go to the gym once a month, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
If you send a mailer one time, it's not going to work.
Right.
If you pick up the phones one time, it's not going to work.
Right.
So, are you willing to put in the effort for a consistent amount of time to begin getting the results? And a
Right.
consistent amount of time is not overnight. A consistent amount of time in real estate, and this isn't for social media, this is for any part of the transaction.
Right.
It's not uncommon for agents not to close their first deal in the first 9 months.
Right.
So are you willing to put in the work for 9 months, 1 year, 2 years before you began getting the results? I kid you not. I did not begin to get traction on social media for probably 2.5 years. So I'm not like some viral sensation, right? Like I just showed up every single day for
Yeah.
2 years until I began to see some results. And it wasn't like I saw results overnight, or when I started seeing results that it was this windfall of success.
Right.
Not at all. It was
Right.
the opposite. You get a little thing here, you get a little thing here. And now I can say very like transparently, it works. I just signed a listing agreement and I'm getting the house ready for sale for an agent from San Francisco that sent me the referral in LA.
Right.
So they're seeing you. The
Through social media.
reality through social media, direct result.
Right.
Direct result. And that's not the first, that's not the only, it's not going to be the last. It's
Right.
the same thing as developing a farm. Anybody, like, so you're talking to a lot of agents. How long are you telling people that they need a farm before they see something from it?
Honestly, it's 6 months to a year.
And that's on the short side.
Right.
When I have people that are talking to me about building a farm, I said, don't be ready for them to get to know you for at least 18 months.
Right.
Like, I have an agent on my team that wants to cultivate a farm. And I said, beautiful.
Right.
Step one is figuring out what your budget's going to be for 12 months.
Right.
If you can't afford what it takes to show up twice a month, 3 times a month, once a month, whatever that number is going to be for
Right.
12 months, don't do it.
Right. Well, exactly. And it does come down to consistency with anything. That's what I say to people a lot is, social media, number one, it's free,
Right.
right? It's free. And so if you can take 10 minutes a day, we're not even talking about batching content, right? Take 10
Right.
minutes a day for the person who is not familiar with Instagram and TikTok and all these different apps. Take 10 minutes real quick while you're sipping on your coffee, make a real quick educational piece of content about what sellers should know
Right.
and post. And
Right.
so do that, right? Whether it's 5 times a week or 3 times a week or 1 time a week, the way you got started. One question, I have a series of questions at this point
Please.
that I talk to that I ask agents, right? I ask agents because so recently I've been asked to do a lot of classes for brokerages and stuff on social media and whatnot. And so I go in and what I've been starting with is, do you want everybody to know that you're a realtor? The answer is yes, right? The next question is, what are you doing to accomplish that? Real question, right? Genuine question, wanting to have a conversation about it. And usually and you want to know what one of the most common answers is? My listing signs. For real. I mean, so anyways, okay, cool. Genuine answer. Listing signs, cool.
That's one way.
It's one way. If you have listings,
Right.
right? What else? We have phone calls. We have calls. Good. Door knocking, good. Right? It all comes down to, okay, what if your sphere, right? Your SOI, which Tom Ferry talks about, your sphere of influence today is social media.
Right.
And so if you're not posting content consistently on social media, you're missing it.
Right.
I love Gary Vaynerchuk's word for it. If you're not posting content on social media, you're extremely vulnerable, right? Your business is vulnerable. And so anyways, yeah, I mean, that's big. And when you talk about, posting on social media, it's not just posting like you're just listed and you're just sold and all of these different things. It really is about posting video content to get people to know, like, and trust you, which, we are running out of time here, but what we should do is either have a follow-up, episode to where all we talk about
It's social.
is social and personal
Right.
brand, right?
Right.
Personal brand. But so yeah, I mean it's a long process. It's a big conversation to have. And but anyways, before we wrap up, because we will wrap up in just a minute.
No, that's okay. When it's getting good, I can understand. So like I'm
Yeah,
here for it.
awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, so before we wrap up, what is your biggest advice for realtors at this point in time? I mean, really, because we're going through a weird shift in the market. We're in kind of a buyer's market. Nobody can really pinpoint whether it is or not, but it kind of is. We have all these, economists talking about interest rates are most likely going to go down. Some are saying to 4% by April. I don't know if you've heard that one. I mean, that's a very optimistic, approach, but most are saying we're going to see that 5% by the end of the year.
Sure.
What if we don't? So, there's a lot of different things going on. So, I mean, what are your kind of closing thoughts? And then I have one last question for you at the end, but kind of give your
Absolutely.
closing thoughts here.
So it might not be the sexiest answer,
Yeah.
and it's not the pill that people are looking for,
Yeah.
because the recipe for success in 2023 is not social media.
Yeah.
It's having conversations with people,
Right.
period.
Right.
It's setting appointments,
Yep.
period. There's nothing sexy about that, but that's the truth. So in this market, what I am focused on is what I can control. What I can control is the number of people that I'm talking to every day. What
Yep.
I can control is the content I'm putting out. What I can control is what I can control. So for anybody that is trying to be successful this year, you need to stay accountable, and you
Right.
need to have ways in which to measure what you are doing,
Right.
because you're not closing escrows every single day. And
Right.
if you don't have a way to measure accomplishment beyond a transaction closing, you finish the day feeling incomplete, unsatisfied, and just sort of lost.
Right.
So everybody everybody should have a number in which they are committed to every single day as far as number of conversations they plan on having. And if you're going to choose between making a video and getting on the phone, I need you to get on the phone. And like this is my opinion.
Right.
You need to get on the phone, because those videos are not effective unless you are out there communicating with the people watching them. So let me put an asterisk on that. It's not necessarily being on the phone, it's having conversations. So if you want to have those conversations through direct messages, have them through direct messages. If you want to stand in line at Starbucks and talk to everybody that walks in,
Right.
do that. If you want to do it on the phone, whatever it is, but it's very simple. Have a number that you are committed to every single day as far as conversations that you want to have a number as far as how many appointments that you are committed to set every single day, and you
Yep.
don't leave the office or you don't leave your desk until that is done.
100%. Yeah, no, I do think it's true. And I think a lot of people, confuse what prospecting is,
Right.
right? People think that prospecting is either door knocking, cold calling, or what is the other one?
Mailers.
Yeah, mailers or whatever, but something that people don't talk about is sending a video message to
Oh my
somebody on
gosh,
Instagram, right? I mean, we're talking
dynamite.
dynamite.
You want
So
me to give you a quick hack that I've been giving to everybody that
please,
is like really effective? So this is a social media one for people that want to be posting on social media.
yeah,
So you post something on your story. When you post something on your story, you can see everybody that watched it, right?
yep,
What I do is I'll go through that list and I'll look for non-agents, people that I want to transact with.
right.
And I'll look for ones that also have a story shared. So
Mm,
the way that you know that is they have a little ring around theirs. Because I'm not trying to get into the weeds on what they posted on their wall.
right,
So let's say, Bo, you're in my market. I want to work with you. I want you to see my content more. You just watched what I shared. Let me see what you have going on. I'm going to watch your story.
right,
You've posted a screenshot of you doing a podcast.
right,
I will take the phone. I will go to the DMs. I don't waste time like trying to craft something articulate. I will pull up the camera and I will say, "What's up, Bo? I just saw you post that screenshot of you and that guy recording the podcast. I can't wait to listen to it. When's it going to come out?"
Yep.
Send.
Wow.
I've done two things. I've started a conversation, and the Jedi algorithm is
Yep.
now going to put my content in front of him even more.
Right.
And my goal in the DM is to start a conversation and then get it to the phone.
Right. And that's, it's huge. I don't know if you know, I can't remember his last name here. Let me just find it. I'm sure you know him, could be friends. I don't, just from being in the Ed Stulak.
Oh, yeah.
So Ed
Killing it.
Stulak, for anybody who doesn't know who he is, he's an agent. I don't know where,
New
but
Jersey.
New Jersey, his thing was for every follower he got, he would send a direct message to immediately after them following. Right. And so that's great, but I think your strategy is awesome because, again, you're starting conversation and then they see, oh, you're a realtor, right? If they don't know already, which they probably do, but now you're putting that yourself right in front of them. And the key for me with social media is that you're putting yourself right in front of them where they choose to be.
Right.
Right, with cold calling and with door knocking, right, you are putting yourself where they don't necessarily want you,
Right.
which does not mean that it doesn't work. Right, cold calling and door knocking and postcards have proven to work if you do them right.
100%.
Right, and so I'm not saying that, but is every agent doing it right?
Right.
Right, and so, but with this, you're meeting people where they already are and where they choose to spend their time. People
Right.
scroll on this thing all day long. They choose to be there. And so when you
Right.
meet them and when you put yourself right in front of where they want to be, it's like what? I mean, it's literally something that we would have created if it wasn't already here. Like we would have
Exactly.
tried to like design this exact thing for real estate.
Right. And that's just so, what you said is exactly why you have to be consistent on social media. The reason why it's important to show up, in my opinion, as frequently as possible is because you do not know what day the message that you're going to deliver is going to resonate with somebody.
Yep.
Tom Ferry, Brian Buffini, Brandon, whatever, Cheplek, I don't know, Mike Ferry, all these guys are saying the same thing.
Right.
The reason some have more than others is because they found a way to communicate with a group of people that like the way that they say it.
Right.
Everything we are saying on social is not novel or unique,
No.
but the hope is that anything that we're delivering, maybe the day that it's being played on somebody's stereo
Right.
is the day that they're ready for it to click.
Right.
So you've shown up on social Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Joe Jonas Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was in a shit mood and didn't want to listen to what you had to say. But on Thursday,
Right.
he got kicked in the shin by his neighbor and was like, I got to get a fucking house. I got to get out of here. And then he sees your video and then he's like, all right, it's time to talk to him. So yeah, that's all. I don't want to get on my soapbox, but you don't know when people want to hear your message. You don't know when they're ready for you to be, like, for them to listen, which is why you have to show up.
100%. All right, so we're going to close this thing up. Dude, this was really, really great.
Yeah, it
I'm
was.
super pumped, man, that I got to hear the story. I hope that everybody listening, really gets a lot out of this. I know that they will. And so,
Thank you.
but my last big question for you, man, is what's the next mountain? What's the next big adventure for Chris?
Metaphorically, spiritually, literally, my baby is due the day that I left for Mount Everest last year. I
No.
left for Mount Everest March 28th. This baby boy is coming March 28th.
Let's go.
That's God.
100%.
That's the universe. Like, whatever you believe in, that's not a coincidence.
No.
So my next mountain is going to be this human that I'm bringing into the world. It's my first. I'm really scared. I'm really excited, and I'm going to do a good job.
Yeah.
I'm going to really work hard to do a good job. So that's where my focus is beginning to move to, is my growing family.
Dude, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from
Thank you.
experience, I can tell you from experience, man, that you know, as a husband and as a man, having a son, dude, it's really special. And I'm really
I
happy.
like get choked up already, and I don't even know why.
Dude, it's I mean, I just wait, man, until he's here, because I mean, I'm a younger guy than you. I would imagine. And I mean, how old are you?
I'm 32.
I'm 24.
Oh, you're very young.
Dude, man, I have an 8-month old, man, and I will look at him like crawling around on the ground and legit choke up.
Right.
Why? I don't know. I mean, I will. And I'll look at my wife, like I'll look, and she's got tears. Like, dude, it really is cool. And then like just knowing that you have a boy to to do a better job for than what your family did for you. And dude, my family did a good job with me. I
Mine
had a good
too.
family, man. So I have a big responsibility. And so,
Exactly.
but I'm up for it, man. This is like you, man. This is something I will not fail at, right? I will
Right.
not fail at it. And so I'm really happy for you, man. I'm super excited to see the
Thank you.
pictures, the videos, if you choose to share that with everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Um, so again, dude, thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate this.
Thank
Um,
you, Bo.
look,
Absolutely.
look forward to connecting, in the future. And for anybody listening or watching, I appreciate you guys. I hope that you guys got a lot out of this episode. And stay tuned for more. Thanks, Chris.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bo. See ya.